If you're over 60 and watching this from anywhere in the world, what I'm about to share might be the single most practical longevity toolkit you'll hear all year. And it comes from a country where people routinely live active, independent lives well into their 90s without ever stepping foot in a gym. I'm talking about Japan, where the average lifespan pushes past 84 years, and the percentage of people who remain mobile and mentally sharp in their 80s is more than double what we see in most Western nations. But here's what almost nobody talks about. It's not some exotic supplement or high-tech medical intervention that's keeping them strong. It's 6 simple movements woven into daily life, movements so subtle that most visitors to Japan wouldn't even notice them happening. Yet each one targets a specific pillar of aging that determines whether you spend your later years thriving or merely surviving. Now, I'm going to walk you through all 6 movements in order from the foundational to the most transformative. Number 2 on this list is the one that reversed a 73-year-old woman's chronic ankle instability in less than 3 weeks, and it takes about 90 seconds a day. But number 1, the movement at the top, is something you can start doing right now, today, in under 60 seconds. And it's been shown in analyses across multiple research centers to improve cognitive function, balance, and even immune markers in people over 65. It sounds almost too simple to matter, but by the end of this video you'll understand exactly why it works and how to layer it into your routine without changing a single other thing you do. Before we dive in, do me a quick favor. Drop a comment right now with your age and where you're watching from. I want to see how global this community really is, and it helps me understand what content resonates most with people in your stage of life. Alright, let's get into it. Movement number 6 is called floor sitting and rising, or in Japanese context you'll sometimes hear people refer to aspects of it as seiza when kneeling is involved, though the full practice is broader than that. This is about your ability to lower yourself to the ground under control and then stand back up without using your hands or grabbing onto furniture. Why does this matter? Because research coming out of universities in Brazil and later replicated in studies involving older adults in Japan found that the simple ability to sit on the floor and rise again without support is one of the strongest predictors of all-cause mortality in people over 60. In other words, if you can get down and get up with minimal assistance, your risk of dying in the next 6 years drops significantly compared to someone who needs to brace themselves or can't do it at all. The mechanism here is straightforward. This movement requires strength in your quadriceps, glutes, and core, plus flexibility in your hips, ankles, and spine, plus balance and proprioception, which is your body's sense of where it is in space. All of those physical qualities decline with age, but they decline faster when they're never challenged. Most older adults in the West sit in chairs all day, and chairs are wonderful for comfort, but they completely remove the need for your body to stabilize itself through a full range of motion. In Japan, even though Western-style furniture is now common, many homes still have tatami mat rooms where people sit, eat, and relax on the floor. That daily practice keeps those movement patterns alive. Let me tell you about Robert, 67, a retired electrician from Oregon. 2 years ago, he couldn't get off the floor without rolling to his side, pushing up on one knee and grabbing a chair. His knees were stiff, his hips were tight, and honestly, he'd started avoiding any situation where he might end up on the ground because getting back up was embarrassing. He came to me asking about knee replacement, assuming that was the only path forward. I suggested we try something different first. We started with assisted floor sits. He would lower himself to a cushion using a sturdy chair for light support. Sit for 30 seconds, then use the chair again to help him rise. Every few days, we lowered the cushion height by an inch and reduced how much he leaned on the chair. Within 2 months, Robert could sit cross-legged on a yoga mat and stand up using just one hand on the floor for balance. Within 4 months, he didn't need the hand. His knee pain didn't vanish completely, but it decreased by about 60%, and his confidence in his own body came roaring back. Here's your protocol. If you're starting from scratch, use a low stool or a thick cushion and practice lowering yourself down and standing up with a chair or countertop nearby for balance. Go slow, keep your core engaged and never force a position that creates sharp pain. As you get stronger, reduce the height of your seat and reduce your reliance on external support. Aim to practice this once a day, maybe in the morning or before bed. If you have significant knee or hip issues, talk to a physical therapist before attempting full floor sitting. But even modified versions of this movement where you lower and raise your center of gravity will build strength and coordination. The goal isn't to sit on the floor for hours. It's simply to prove to your body that you still can. Now here's the kicker. Getting up and down from the floor also wakes up stabilizer muscles in your ankles and feet that most shoes and flat walking surfaces let atrophy. Which brings us perfectly to movement number 5. Movement number 5 is toe spreading and gripping, sometimes called yubi-ashi exercises in Japanese foot health practices. This is about actively controlling the muscles in your feet and toes. Something that sounds trivial until you realize how much balance, posture, and even knee and hip health depends on what's happening at the base of your body. In Western countries, we spend decades cramming our feet into narrow, rigid, cushioned shoes that essentially turn our feet into passive platforms. Over time, the small intrinsic muscles that control your toes weaken, your arches collapse, and your ability to adapt to uneven surfaces disappears. In Japan, there's a long tradition of going barefoot indoors, wearing flexible footwear like tabi socks with a split toe, and practicing exercises that keep the feet strong and responsive. Why does this matter after 60? Because falls are the leading cause of injury-related death in older adults, and the majority of falls happen not because of a dramatic trip, but because of a small loss of balance that the feet can't correct. When your toes can't spread, grip, or respond independently, your base of support shrinks and your brain has less sensory information to work with. Analyses from gerontology departments have found that older adults with stronger foot and toe muscles have faster balance recovery times and report fewer near-fall incidents. It's also been linked to reduced knee pain because a more stable foot reduces compensatory stress up the chain. Let me tell you about Linda, 71, a former teacher from Florida. She'd had 2 near falls in 6 months, both times catching herself on a wall or railing but walking away shaken. Her balance wasn't terrible in a clinical test, but she told me her feet always felt numb and clumsy, like she was walking on stumps. When I asked her to try spreading her toes apart, she couldn't do it. They barely moved. We started a simple routine. Every morning while brushing her teeth, she'd practice lifting just her big toe while keeping the other 4 down, then reverse it, lifting the 4 smaller toes while pressing the big toe into the floor. She'd also spread her toes as wide as possible and hold for 10 seconds, then scrunch them like she was gripping a towel. After 3 weeks, Linda called me, almost laughing, to say she could feel the ground again. Her feet felt awake. After 2 months, she reported 0 near falls and said her knee pain on her right side had improved noticeably. Here's your protocol. Spend 2 to 3 minutes a day on toe exercises. Sit in a chair or stand and practice spreading your toes wide, then scrunching them. Try to lift your big toe independently, then the other 4. If this feels impossible at first, use your hands to gently assist and show your brain the movement pattern. You can also place a small towel on the floor and practice gripping it with your toes and pulling it toward you. Do this barefoot, and if you can, spend more time walking around your home without shoes or in minimal, flexible footwear. If you have diabetes or neuropathy, inspect your feet daily and consult your doctor before doing any vigorous foot exercises, but gentle mobility work is almost always safe and beneficial. Stronger feet mean a stronger foundation for everything else your body does. And that foundation becomes even more critical when we add in the next movement, which is where things start to get interesting. Movement number 4 is dynamic hip mobility, particularly a practice you'll see in Japanese morning routines called ashi ageru undo, or leg lifting exercises. This isn't about building bulky muscles or doing high kicks. It's about maintaining the ability to move your hip joint freely in all directions, forward, backward, and to the side, through a comfortable range of motion. After 60, hip mobility tends to decline sharply, partly because of natural changes in cartilage and joint fluid, but mostly because people stop moving their hips through full ranges. We sit, we walk in a straight line, and that's about it. The hip becomes stiff, the glutes weaken, and suddenly stairs feel steeper. Getting in and out of a car becomes awkward, and balance suffers because your body can't make the quick adjustments it used to. Research from orthopedic and physical therapy institutions has consistently found that hip strength and mobility are among the best predictors of functional independence in older adults. If your hips are strong and mobile, you're far less likely to need a walker or assistance with daily tasks. Conversely, limited hip mobility is often the hidden culprit behind lower back pain, knee pain, and even poor posture. The Japanese approach here is elegantly simple. Rather than waiting until there's a problem, people incorporate small hip-focused movements into their daily routine, often first thing in the morning or as part of a light warm-up before a walk. Let me tell you about George, 69, a retired mechanic from Texas. He'd been dealing with nagging lower back pain for 3 years. He'd tried physical therapy, stretching, even a couple of cortisone injections, and nothing gave him lasting relief. When I assessed his movement, his back itself wasn't the main issue. His hips barely moved. When he tried to lift his knee toward his chest, his lower back would round and compensate. When he tried to step to the side, his pelvis would tilt. His hips had become so stiff that his spine was doing all the work. We started a basic hip mobility sequence every morning. Standing next to a countertop for balance, he'd swing one leg gently forward and back 10 times, then side to side 10 times, then make small circles in both directions. Slow, controlled, no forcing. We did the same on the other leg. The whole thing took about 3 minutes. Within 2 weeks, George's back pain had decreased by half. Within a month, it was nearly gone. His hips had started doing their job again, and his spine could finally relax. Here's your protocol. Every morning, ideally before breakfast or after you've had a chance to move around a little and warm up, stand next to a kitchen counter or sturdy chair. Lift one knee toward your chest, hold for 2 seconds, then extend that leg behind you in a gentle, controlled manner, leaning slightly forward if you need to, but keeping your core engaged. Do 10 repetitions. Then lift the same leg out to the side, not high, just to a comfortable height, and bring it back. Do 10 repetitions. Finally, make small circles with your knee lifted, 5 clockwise and 5 counterclockwise. Switch legs and repeat the entire sequence. Keep the movement smooth and pain-free. If you feel a pinch or sharp discomfort, reduce the range of motion. Over time, you'll notice you can lift a little higher, move a little more freely, and your body will thank you by moving more efficiently all day long. Now, the next movement, number 3, is where we start to see some of those surprising neurological benefits that most people don't associate with physical exercise. Movement number 3 is single-leg balance holds, or katashi baransu in some Japanese fitness communities. This is exactly what it sounds like. You stand on one foot and hold the position, but don't let the simplicity fool you. Single-leg balance is one of the most powerful assessments and interventions for healthy aging that we have. Studies from neurology and gerontology centers around the world have found that the ability to balance on one leg for at least 10 seconds is strongly correlated with longevity and brain health. In fact, some research has suggested that people over 60 who cannot balance on one leg for 10 seconds have a significantly higher risk of cognitive decline and dementia over the following decade. Why? Because balance isn't just a physical skill. It's a complex neurological task that requires your brain to integrate input from your eyes, inner ear, muscles, and joints in real time and send precise signals to keep you upright. When you practice single-leg balance, you're essentially giving your brain a workout. You're strengthening the neural pathways that control coordination and reaction time, and you're building stability in the small muscles around your ankles, knees, and hips. This becomes especially important after 60 because falls are catastrophic at this age, often leading to fractures, hospitalization, and a rapid decline in independence. But falls don't happen randomly. They happen when your balance system can't react fast enough to a slip or a stumble. Regular balance training dramatically reduces that risk. Let me tell you about Patricia, 73, a former nurse from Arizona. She'd always considered herself steady on her feet, but one day in my office I asked her to stand on her right leg and close her eyes. She wobbled immediately and grabbed my arm within 2 seconds. It shocked her. She said she'd never realized her balance was that compromised. We started a simple daily practice. Every morning and every evening, she'd stand on one leg for as long as she could, using a countertop for light fingertip support if needed, and she'd do it on both sides. At first, she could barely manage 5 seconds on her weaker left side. But she was consistent. After 1 week, she hit 10 seconds. After 3 weeks, she could do 30 seconds on each leg without support, eyes open. After 6 weeks, she tried closing her eyes and managed 15 seconds. But here's the most interesting part. Patricia told me that her ankle, which had felt unstable ever since a sprain 5 years earlier, suddenly felt solid again. She said it was like her body had remembered how to stabilize itself. That's exactly what happened. Her brain had rebuilt the neural map of her left leg. Here's your protocol. Twice a day, morning and evening. Practice standing on one leg. Start with your eyes open and use a countertop or wall for light support if needed. Your goal is to hold the position for 30 seconds on each leg. Once you can do that comfortably, try letting go of the support. Once that feels easy, close your eyes and see how long you can hold it. This is not a test you need to pass on day 1. It's a practice that will improve week by week if you're consistent. You can even sneak this into daily life. Balance on one leg while brushing your teeth, while waiting for the microwave, while talking on the phone. The more you practice, the better your brain gets at it, and the safer you become in the real world. And speaking of real-world safety, movement number 2 is about to blow your mind because it's the one most people have never even heard of. Yet it might be the single best predictor of how well you'll age. Movement number 2 is neck and shoulder mobility circles, or kubi to katamawashi in Japanese practice. This is a slow, deliberate practice of moving your head and shoulders through their full, comfortable range of motion, circles, tilts, and rolls, usually done while seated or standing in a relaxed posture. Now I know what you're thinking. How could moving your neck and shoulders possibly be more important than strengthening your legs or core? Here's why. Your neck and upper back are the gateway to your brain's blood supply and your body's central nervous system. When the muscles in your neck and shoulders become chronically tight, which they do in almost every older adult who's spent years looking down at phones, reading, or sitting with forward head posture, several things happen. First, blood flow to the brain can be subtly reduced. Second, nerve signals traveling from your brain to the rest of your body can become less efficient. Third, you develop chronic pain and stiffness that limits your ability to stay active. And fourth, your breathing becomes shallow because tight shoulders restrict rib movement. Research from physical medicine and rehabilitation departments has found that older adults with better cervical, that's neck, mobility have lower rates of headaches, better sleep, and even better cognitive performance on memory tests. There's also a growing body of evidence that neck stiffness is associated with dizziness and balance problems in older adults, which makes sense when you realize that some of your balance sensors are located in the muscles and joints of your upper cervical spine. In Japan, light neck and shoulder exercises are a standard part of morning routines and workplace wellness programs. You'll see people doing them on trains, in parks, before meetings. It's normalized in a way it simply isn't in the West. Let me tell you about Thomas, 68, a retired accountant from Michigan. He came to me complaining of chronic headaches, neck stiffness, and occasional dizziness when he turned his head quickly. He'd seen neurologists, had MRIs, tried medications, and nothing had really helped. When I assessed his neck mobility, he could barely rotate his head 40 degrees to either side. Normal is about 80 degrees. His shoulders were so rounded forward that his upper back looked like a question mark. We started a daily routine. Every morning, he'd sit in a chair with his feet flat on the floor and his spine as tall as he could comfortably make it. He'd slowly tilt his head to the right, bringing his ear toward his shoulder, hold for 5 seconds, return to center, then tilt to the left. Then he'd turn his head to look over his right shoulder, hold, return, then look left. Then he'd drop his chin toward his chest, hold. Then gently tilt his head back to look up, hold. Finally, he'd roll his shoulders backward in big, slow circles 10 times, then forward 10 times. The whole sequence took about 4 minutes. Within 1 week, his headaches decreased. Within 3 weeks, they were gone. Within 6 weeks, he could turn his head almost normally, and the dizziness had completely resolved. Here's your protocol. Once a day, ideally in the morning, sit or stand in a comfortable posture. Perform slow, controlled neck tilts in 4 directions, side to side and front to back. Hold each position for 5 seconds and never force into pain. Then do 10 slow shoulder rolls backward and 10 forward. You can also add gentle neck rotations, turning your head to look over each shoulder and holding for 5 seconds. The key is slow and smooth. This is not a stretch where you're trying to push past resistance. It's a mobility flow that reminds your joints and muscles how to move. If you have a history of neck injury, cervical spine issues, or severe arthritis, check with a doctor or physical therapist before doing these exercises. But for most people, they're not only safe, but profoundly beneficial. You'll likely notice within days that your neck feels looser, your posture improves, and that background tension you've been carrying for years starts to melt away. Now we've covered 5 movements, and every single one of them is valuable. But movement number 1 is different. It's the simplest, the shortest, and according to multiple lines of research, possibly the most important thing you can do every single day to protect your brain, your immune system, and your longevity. Movement number 1 is deep diaphragmatic breathing, or fukushiki kokyu in Japanese, which translates to abdominal breathing. This is the practice of breathing deeply into your belly rather than shallowly into your chest, and doing it with intention for just 1 to 3 minutes a day. Now, I know breathing doesn't sound like a movement in the traditional sense, but your diaphragm is a muscle, and learning to use it properly is a physical skill that most older adults have lost. Watch a baby breathe and you'll see their belly rise and fall with each breath. That's diaphragmatic breathing. Watch most adults over 60 and you'll see their shoulders and chest move while their belly stays still. That's shallow, inefficient breathing, and it has serious consequences. When you breathe shallowly, you're not fully oxygenating your blood, which means your brain and muscles get less fuel. You're also activating your sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight system, which keeps your body in a low-grade state of stress. Chronic shallow breathing is linked to higher blood pressure, worse sleep, increased inflammation, and even a weaker immune response. Deep diaphragmatic breathing does the opposite. It activates your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system, which lowers your heart rate, reduces blood pressure, improves digestion, and tells your immune system to function optimally. Studies from institutions studying cardiovascular health and aging have found that people who practice deep breathing techniques have measurably lower levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, and higher heart rate variability, which is a marker of resilience and longevity. But here's the part that really matters. Research involving older adults has shown that just 5 minutes a day of deep breathing practice can improve cognitive function, particularly attention and memory, within a matter of weeks. It's thought that this happens because deep breathing increases oxygen delivery to the brain and may stimulate the vagus nerve, a major nerve that connects your brain to your heart, gut, and immune system and plays a key role in regulating inflammation and mood. In Japan, deep breathing practices have been part of traditional health routines for centuries, often tied to martial arts, meditation, and morning wellness rituals. It's not seen as something extra. It's seen as foundational. Let me tell you about Helen, 74, a retired librarian from California. She'd been struggling with anxiety, poor sleep, and what she described as brain fog for over a year. Her doctor had offered her medication for anxiety, but she wanted to try something else first. I taught her a simple breathing protocol. Every morning, right after waking up, she would sit on the edge of her bed, place one hand on her chest and one hand on her belly, and breathe in slowly through her nose for a count of 4, letting her belly rise while keeping her chest relatively still. Then she'd hold the breath gently for a count of 4 and exhale slowly through her mouth for a count of 6. She'd repeat this for 3 minutes, about 10 full breath cycles. That's it. Within 1 week, Helen told me she was falling asleep faster and waking up less during the night. Within 2 weeks, she said the constant hum of anxiety in her chest had quieted. Within a month, she reported that her thinking felt clearer and she had more energy during the day. She'd done nothing else differently. Just 3 minutes of intentional breathing every morning. Here's your protocol. Once a day, ideally first thing in the morning before you get caught up in the day's tasks, sit comfortably in a chair or on the edge of your bed. Place one hand on your chest and one on your abdomen. Breathe in slowly through your nose for a count of 4, focusing on expanding your belly rather than lifting your shoulders. Hold the breath gently for a count of 4. Then exhale slowly through your mouth for a count of 6, feeling your belly fall. Repeat this cycle for at least 10 breaths, which will take about 3 minutes. If counting feels awkward, just focus on making your exhale longer than your inhale. That's the key. A longer exhale signals your nervous system to relax. You can do this practice anytime you feel stressed or anxious during the day, but having a consistent morning routine builds the habit and gives you a calm, focused start. Now, let's step back and see the bigger picture. These 6 movements, floor sitting and rising, toe spreading and gripping, dynamic hip mobility, single leg balance, neck and shoulder mobility, and deep diaphragmatic breathing, are not random. They address the 6 pillars of healthy aging: strength and power, stability and balance, flexibility and range of motion, sensory awareness and foot health, neurological function and circulation, and autonomic regulation and stress resilience. Most exercise programs for older adults focus on 1 or 2 of these pillars, usually strength and maybe balance. But the Japanese longevity model, whether it's intentional or simply the result of cultural habits, touches all 6. And the beauty is that none of these movements require equipment, a gym membership, or even much space. You can do all 6 in your living room in under 15 minutes a day. Here's what I recommend. Start with just 1 movement. If balance is your biggest concern, start with single leg holds. If you feel stiff and achy, start with hip mobility or neck circles. If you're dealing with stress or sleep problems, start with the breathing practice. Do that 1 movement every day for a week. Once it feels natural, add a second movement. Build slowly. By the end of a month, you'll have all 6 woven into your routine, and I promise you'll feel the difference. You'll move more confidently. You'll sleep better. You'll think more clearly. And you'll have taken back a level of control over your aging process that most people don't even realize is possible. One more thing. These movements aren't just about preventing decline. They're about maintaining the kind of active, joyful life that makes getting older something you can embrace rather than fear. In Japan, the concept of ikigai, which roughly translates to reason for being, is central to how people think about aging. You don't retire and fade away. You stay engaged, you contribute, you move, you adapt. And movement is the physical expression of that philosophy. When you can get up off the floor, walk with confidence, balance on one leg, breathe deeply, and move your body freely, you're not just adding years to your life. You're adding life to your years. So here's my final question for you, and I really want to hear your answer in the comments. Which one of these 6 movements are you going to start with today, and why? Are you going to work on your balance because you've had a close call? Are you going to practice deep breathing because stress has been eating at you? Or maybe you're going to try getting down on the floor and back up because you've been avoiding it for too long. Let me know. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to take that first step.